In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to replace your front struts in your Subaru Forester. It's located in your wheel well. I'm going to use a 19mm socket to take the wheel off. You want to make sure the wheel doesn't fall off, so just keep a hand on it while you take that last one. I'm going to disconnect this brake hose from the bracket. Use a 12mm socket. The nut in the back is supposed to be welded to the bracket, but it is spinning freely at this point. I'm going to use my locking pliers and hold it still. Okay, so this nut on the back of the bracket is usually welded to it. On the new strut, it'll come with the nut welded, so you don't need that. You might want to replace your bolt though. So you're just gonna put that off to the side. Now we're gonna disconnect our ABS speed sensor. Use a trim tool and just remove the ABS sensor. I'm gonna use a 19mm socket and a 20mm wrench on the other end and loosen up the strut bolts. Okay, now you're going to get your top bolt with the same sizes. So before we take out these bolts, you're going to want to bungee cord your axle in place. That way when you take off the strut, this whole thing doesn't fall forward and stress your axle. All right, so now we have our bolts that we have to take out. Just gonna give them a tap. So we just removed these two bolts for the strut, and now we're gonna go on top and loosen up the nuts. So I'm gonna use a 12mm socket, and I'm gonna take this nut off and this nut off, and I'm gonna take this one off, but leave it on a few threads. The reason for that is so my strut doesn't fall below. So now I'm going to grab a hold of my strut. Just grab it by the spring and slowly take off this nut. Okay, I'm holding the wheel in, the axle, with my knee in case my bungee cord is not doing its job. I'm going to slowly let go and make sure that bungee holds. You're going to want to put a pry bar in between here if it doesn't come out right away. Just be careful of your ABS wire as you take your strut out. We're going to ease our way up there. And the goal is to catch at least one nut on one of the studs just to get started. Okay, you can usually tell when it does go in. At this point, I'm going to hold it up. All right, so I'm not as strong as some guys out there, and I need a little persuasion, a little help. So I'm going to hold this strut up like this. Once I get it in the hole, I'm going to put a piece of wood under my strut, maybe two, depending on how high you have to go. And that should help hold it in place. I'm going to put all my nuts on, finger tight. I'm going to come back down here, get rid of my blocks. And now that's just hanging in place. I'm going to turn our strut facing the right way, bolts out. And we're going to put our bolts in. Now we're going to put our bolts in. The shorter one goes in the bottom, and the top one is the adjuster bolt for when you get in alignment. Sometimes if I'm having a hard time getting a bolt in, I'll take something on the other side to just make sure things are lined up correctly. You can use a punch, anything that's helpful. So we're going to use a 14mm socket for the new nuts. I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit, see where my bolt is down here. All right, so now I'm just going to hand tighten this bolt in, and that should allow us to line up our bottom hole. I'm not going to tighten it down yet because we are going to torque those later. All right, now that I've tightened down those nuts a little bit, yeah, now I can get my bolt in there. Okay, I just want to make a note that the bottom bolt has a washer and is not oblonged. The top bolt is oblonged with no washer. So now we're going to put our nuts on. Start them by hand. All right, so now that we are lined up, everything's hand tightened, we're going to snug it up. We will be torquing these. So after you put your bolts in, I want you to make sure your wheel isn't tilted out or in and it's upright as possible. Once you see that, you may have to push on it. You may have to turn your bolt, your cam bolt, your adjuster bolt. Once you see that it's up and down, then you can go ahead and torque it. Then you have to go to get an alignment to make sure that your car is going down the road the proper way. I'm going to hold my bolt in place. We are going to torque these to 115 foot-pounds. All right, so now we can take our bungee cord off. Make sure you take it completely out, don't leave it there. And then forget it later when you're driving down the road. All right, so now we're going to hook up our ABS sensor again. Okay, so now we're going to put our bolt in and use a 12mm socket to snug it down. Just snug that down. Reinstall your front wheel. You're going to start the lug nuts by hand. Gonna snug it up, bottom one first, lock the wheel on. Gonna snug them up, and then it's 89 foot-pounds to torque it. We're gonna torque our wheels to 89 foot-pounds in a star-like pattern. I usually make sure I go one time around, one more time. Make sure I got them all. All right, now that we have the wheel on the ground and all the weight of the vehicle is on it, we can torque this to 15 foot-pounds. All right, so now that you've torqued everything down, you're going to want to take this cap off your old strut and put it on your new one. Keep the water out from getting this nut all rusty. All right, so now you're going to want to take this vehicle down to your local alignment shop. Make sure the alignment is good. And take a deep breath, because this job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.